Welcome to Security Nation, an ESA podcast that brings you the voice of electronic security and life safety. We bring on security pros to discuss the latest industry happenings, new technology, and best practices, telling your story to become the ever-present voice in an ever-changing industry. I'd like to introduce this episode's guest. We have Michael Barnes. He is the founding partner of Barnes Associates, an advisory and consulting firm that specializes in providing acquisition, financing, and valuation services to the security alarm industry. He is also serving on the board of directors of both ESA and SIA and was the 13th person inducted into the Security Sales and Integration Magazine Hall of Fame. Thanks for coming on the podcast today, Michael.
Sure, my pleasure, Hannah. Happy to be here.
Yes, me as well. So if you'd like, would you be able to share with our listeners a little bit about your background in the industry?
Yeah, sure. One quick correction on the intro. I'm actually only on the board of ESA right now, although I have in the past served on the board of SIA, just on the board of ESA right now. But you know, my journey to the industry, I think, was like a lot of people. It was a lot to do with about an accident, if you will. I was in finance when I was a young man. I had seen the industry, and I thought it was just wonderful. I thought the mission that the industry was pursuing and the services they offered were great. And then I'll never forget, I was actually talking to an owner of a security alarm company, and he told me, he said, you know, we make something like 70 or 80% bottom line margins on this monitoring recurring revenue under multi-year automatic renewing contracts. And I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. And plus you're doing just a great service. So I started looking into the industry. I quickly realized it wasn't quite as simple as he had characterized it, as I'm sure all of your listeners know. But what did seem to be the case is that the industry was probably heading towards some consolidation. It was pretty obvious to me, at least this was 30-some years ago, that the flow of money into the industry, which was necessary for it to continue to grow, had a little bit of friction because there's some kind of nuances to the space. And I was looking for something new to do. So I started the firm in, I think it was 1986. And, I thought I'd play around in the industry for a couple of years and they would all consolidate up and then I'd have to find another job. But here I sit and still doing the same thing, still loving it.
That's fabulous. So one of the reasons I actually wanted to bring you on the podcast is that we have the ESA Town Hall coming up on November 8th. So I think that'll be, close to within a week of when this episode is going to come out. And during this town hall, we're going to be preparing and welcoming ESA's 75th year, which is 2023, which is extremely exciting and quite the accomplishment. And I believe that you are actually going to be hosting a portion of the town hall where you'll be presenting kind of a state of the industry highlight report. Would you be able to give us maybe like a sneak peek or a preview of some of the things that you'll be discussing, not spoiling anything, of course?
Yeah, no, happy to. I was invited to do a quick update. It's actually a very short version of what my firm does at our annual conference. You know, we host every year the Barnes Buchanan Conference, along with the law firm Buchanan Ingersoll in February every year. Everybody watching is invited. And the big topics that we cover during that, and it's usually takes about 2.5 hours to go into the kind of detail that we do, are first of all talking about kind of industry growth, you know, where the industry is going and what's kind of supporting that growth. We secondly talk about the structure of the industry. It means a lot as to whether it's consolidating up, market share, big players versus small players, things of that nature. So I'll talk about that. I spend a few minutes on KPIs, the key performance indicators, obviously focusing on, I think, the big three. I mean, this is the nature of the business is, you know, what do you have to do to get a customer? How long do you keep them? And then as long as you keep them, what kind of money can you make off of them? And that's kind of the calculus, right, of value in the industry. So I'll talk about the trends on each of those three. I spend a little bit of time in the presentation on threats. Obviously, there's a number of them right now. I'm sure you'll probably have a few questions today about that. That's on everybody's mind, you know, with all the change going on and things like that. And then I close out the presentation discussing kind of valuations and the M&A activity going on in the industry. And again, like you mentioned, it's a 30-minute presentation, so it's pretty straightforward and at a fairly high level. I think in the presentation, if I remember right, There will be a mechanism by which people can email me, ask me follow-up questions, or get a copy of the slides I use. And again, everybody's, of course, welcome to come down to our conference in February.
No, that's awesome. I'm really excited. I'm going to be an attendee on that. So it's been really great also being a part of the process, putting this all together. Just for those listening, the town hall is open to ESA members and non-members. So everyone is invited. And we believe that we're going to be sharing things that are going to be worthwhile to people involved in all, different kinds of aspects in the industry. So there's going to be a lot of great information sharing. But it's not exclusive to ESA members, so you can come along even if you're not. So if you're listening and you're interested in registering for the town hall, I think you can go to, it's www.esaweb.org/calendar. That has all of our different webinars, including the ESA town hall, where you can register for that. And again, that's on November 8th. We're really looking forward to some of the stuff you're going to be sharing there, Michael. One of the things that you just mentioned, so attrition, I mean, that's always a hot topic in this industry. And you definitely have some expertise when it comes to decreasing and how to look at it in different ways. What are some trends that you're seeing with attrition, maybe some best practices?
Yeah, so obviously it is a very hot topic. I mentioned kind of the value creation dynamic of most security alarm companies or integrators that are trying to get customers, keep them as long as they can and make as much money as they can while they have that relationship. And attrition is one of those variables in that equation that has some of the highest impact. It's amazing how subtle movements over long periods of time in attrition can really affect the value of the relationship with your customers and the value of your firm. So the good news is that in 2022, let's see where we are. We're in November 1st, I think, as we're recording this. We're pretty much through the year. We're starting our big surveys of everybody that we track this data with in the industry. And so far, the preliminary indication is that 2022 will come back fairly flat in terms of attrition, which is awesome. I think most people may remember that we had a little bit of an upturn in overall industry attrition before we went into COVID. There's a lot of competition, a lot of change going on, and a little bit of cycling there. And then COVID hit, and I think all of us panicked, is the golden goose going to go away? Well, in actuality, which was great, is that it went the other direction. Attrition rates actually came down during COVID, which just speaks highly to the value of the industry and the resilience of the industry, which was great. Now, we kind of moved up a little bit as we came out of it in 2021. Not bad. Went up a little bit. And again, I think we'll be pretty much flat in 2022. But I might caution everybody, we look at the components of attrition. And I think, as all of your viewers probably know, about 45% of all attrition is move related. And so what we need to keep an eye on is how much moving activity is going on. And there is a little bit of an indication we saw, at least in the second quarter and indications in the third quarter of this year, that overall moving activity is going up a bit. So that means everybody will be back to facing more times their customers are calling and saying, hey, I'm going to change here and I need your help. So one of the first recommendations to everybody is, get your game back up on that. It's very important that you have the script down for how you reply to that, how you try to make sure the customer, if you can, you follow them to wherever they're moving to. And then, of course, whoever moves into the premise, you try to follow up with them and keep them as a customer. So hopefully, at the end of the day, you have two customers where you had one.
No, yeah, that's fantastic. And that's good news on the trends, actually.
Yeah.
I agree that I think all of us were a little frightened when we hit the pandemic. All of a sudden, things became just a big blob of unknown. And so it's great that things are actually looking pretty optimistic considering.
Yeah, and I think with the economy, what we've noticed too. I mean, we've been gathering this data for over 30 years, and as we look around in the past, what's really kind of again great about the industry, we got kind of two forces. One is when things are uncertain or changing very rapidly, we actually tend to see attrition go down. Other than if we have a big recession, obviously you're going to have a lot of companies failing. People canceling just due to financial reasons. But generally speaking, I think most of your viewers ought to assume that we're going to be in one of these modes over the next couple of years where the world remains kind of a scary place. And the systems that everybody offers are really good and they do the job. And so you should count on your customer sticking with you, provided you don't give them a reason to change. And I think that's maybe the cautionary note, aside from moving as well, is you have to understand that people view they have a lot of different options. This is a little bit of a different world now. You have to contact your customer, stay in touch with them. It's not like the old days where you put the system in and you kind of forgot it, or you tried to lay low and hope that the consumer doesn't really ever think about you, or your end user, your commercial end user. These days, you have to be in touch with them. You have to be talking to them, find out their needs, make sure they're happy. But yeah, I think generally you're right. It's a good time from an attrition perspective. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So unless there's any other best practices that you would give as advice to other integrators, one of the things that I wanted to kind of go over was one of your new roles on the ESA Board of Directors, being the board liaison for our Executive Management Professionals, or EMP group. How do you feel about this new role? I don't know, kind of your choice if you want to stay on attrition or move into EMP.
Well, no. I mean, I'm happy to circle back to attrition or any of the other performance indicators. But again, generally you'll see in the town forum or the town hall that, we think it's a good time to be in the business. It's a little bit more challenging in a number of ways, obviously supply chain and labor and things like that. Right. But no, I'm happy to switch to EMP because I'm so excited. I mean, being on the board of ESA is really kind of an honor. I mean, I don't run a security alarm company. I'm basically an associate member, and it's really kind of neat to see the inner workings of ESA, which is, obviously the trade association that represents my clients. And it's just really great to kind of become involved in that. I was really tickled when I was asked to kind of be the board liaison with the EMP program because, that is one of the great benefits of being an ESA member. I mean, I can't tell you how many of our clients kind of blossom and do better through these peer sharing kind of experiences that come through ESA. I mean, the chance to participate in the industry with other people that are dealing with the same issues you are, share best practices, link arm in arm on industry issues that everybody ought to come together with. And the EMP, the Executive Management Professionals kind of development group within ESA is one of these kind of really exciting places. And I think it's a natural fit for me to liaison with that group because I do bring a little bit more of a financial background, valuations, M&A, finance, performance metrics, and things like that. So, I'm excited about trying to make sure the board is aware of what the EMP groups are dealing with, make sure the EMP groups get the resources they need, and if I have a few original ideas along the way, I'm going to throw into the hopper as well. I'm looking forward to that. So I'm excited. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Do you have any topics in mind or that you hope that you can discuss in more detail in some of the EMP small groups?
Yeah, I do. Probably two things are on my mind. First is my firm does a number of kind of performance benchmarking programs for smaller trade groups, not not the scope that ESA has. Where we get companies submit their operating and financial data on a standardized basis, and we're able to rank their performance across a whole bunch of different metrics, comparing with each other. And then they can get together as a group and say, okay, how are you achieving that result? What are you doing because you're head and shoulders better than everybody else? Or troubleshoot where maybe one person's a little bit weak. I'm looking forward to finding out whether or not some of those programs scale up to, as big as ESA is. That'll be exciting. And if nothing else, kind of share some of the insights we've had off of those programs. That's one. The other one, and it's a bit of a pipe dream, but I have to tell you, what's one of the reasons that this industry is still kind of as fragmented and still struggles a little bit is raising money. Because, and I know this is a bit esoteric, but the accounting dynamic for this industry is very, very confusing to outsiders. If you take the average person that runs a big private equity fund or a bank, and you come to this industry and you start talking to them about lending against your RMR, and you start talking about, we make these big margins, but then you show them your financial statements and you realize that you actually lose money on a fully burdened basis on the sales and installation process. Now, in a lot of other industries, if the result of that activity is you get a very, very valuable asset, a multi-year automatically renewing contract, for instance, you typically can find a way to capitalize those costs and amortize them like any other asset over the life of the customer. In this industry, it's a lot more challenging. It's a very nuanced topic, but it hurts the industry. It makes it hard for the industry to talk kind of in the way that a lot of other businesses do to the financial community. And we're going to need capital to keep the industry growing. So one of the things I guess I'd like to do is to see if we can't, within EMP, get a group of motivated kind of financial professionals and CEOs together and see if we can't either lobby the accounting industry or, figure out other ways that maybe we can help report the kind of value that this industry generates.
That's really,
that's a toughie.
That's really
do
interesting.
That before I retire, but that's a toughie. So we'll see.
That's fascinating. That's a challenge I hadn't really thought about, is getting like potential loans and lending programs and stuff like that, because of the unique structure of most alarm companies with the RMR. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and it has far-reaching implications too. I mean, one of the reasons it's kind of a hot topic right now is we had the industry. We probably had 10, 15 banks that kind of understood the industry and could step in and be very effective and efficient in kind of lending. And we lost a couple of those, due to consolidation and a couple of other reasons, not related to the industry, changing, but just banks are changing. And so we had a bit of a shortage of debt capital, and it's amazing how that reverberates through the whole industry. And of course, every one of your ESA members, that are smaller and go to their local bank and try to tell them, even though my financial statement doesn't show that I have much value in the company, I'm sitting on a customer base that trades. I could sell it tomorrow for $1 million or more. I want to borrow against that. And the bank looks at you and kind of says, what? So we need to come up with a better way of kind of more effectively as an industry, making it easier to communicate that value, I guess, to the financial world. So.
That's really getting my wheels spinning. I mean, I know that ESA invested in producing Security America, which is an industry-specific insurance program. So, I mean, we get our brightest minds together, we might be able to do something, in the banking and loan program field. That would be amazing.
Sure.
So moving into, I don't know, it could be connected to kind of what we're talking about, but what do you think is some of our industry's biggest challenges that we're facing right now? And how do you think ESA can address those challenges?
Okay. So the biggest issues. Everybody in the business world these days is dealing with labor and supply chain issues. So that's the first one that comes up. I don't have any particular insight into those problems, other than I can tell you that I think being a member of ESA and ESA's role can be very powerful in that area. I mean, training. It's not just finding labor, but it's finding qualified labor, right? People that can get out and do what you need done. And I think ESA's got some just amazing programs in helping to help young people get trained and come into the industry. Again, through the peer sharing arrangement, there's been a lot of discussion about how to identify and hire, about pay scales, about benefits and things like that, which is just a great forum for that. The second one, which I talk in the town hall a little bit too, look at my notes here really quick, is inflation.
Right.
And, obviously inflation, again, affecting everybody, but this is going to be a real tricky one. I think this is probably one of the more difficult challenges for the industry, because you have to figure out a way to raise your prices. I mean, there's just no way around it. So if you're sitting there and thinking, well, I'll keep my head down, I'll try to cut some costs and, maintain my profitability or the value that I have in the enterprise, that's just not going to work. I mean, there aren't many places that most ESA members are going to find to be able to cut 8 or 10% out of their cost structure to maintain their profitability, right? So you're going to have to raise prices. And in this industry, that's a big challenge. You have to decide how much of it do you want to go after in the initial installation fees? How much do you want to go after in terms of the recurring revenues? Do you hit the customer all at once? Do you drip it in? But I'll tell you what, don't dither. Get out there and start raising prices. I mean, your competitors you deserve it. The services that this industry provides are incredibly valuable. And I can tell you again, anecdotally, our clients that we've seen get aggressive on price increases, they've managed to make it stick. They're just not getting a tremendous amount of pushback. So, I think that's a great place. And again, through the peer sharing arrangement within ESA, it's a perfect way to call, somebody else that that's dealing with the same problem and say, what did you do? And they can say, well, I did it this way and I got some pushback here. So you try it slightly different. You share that. It's just very, very powerful. Probably the last thing which I bring up in the town hall is kind of a threat, though, and is just the overall operating complexity. I mean, I can tell you 30-some years ago when I got into this business, and I used to look at what being a security alarm company or a security integrator was compared to what it is today. It's like night and day, right? I mean, It used to be just intrusion and fire, and now there's a million different additional services. Each one has its own requirements. Each one requires its own area of expertise. Very competitive market, but lots of opportunities. So I think the biggest issue most of your members are dealing with is just overall operating complexity. I mean, they're just, have to be able to come to business every day. And anybody that runs a business knows in that kind of environment, who's going to win? The people that are smarter, people that are better informed, people that make more data-driven decisions. And there's no better way to kind of learn to do that and to work your way through that than through something like the ESA EMP program or other kind of peer sharing arrangements.
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head on all three of those challenges. I mean, I think they're greatly impacting our industry, and we definitely need to be aware and addressing it in any way we can. One thought that came to mind when you were talking about pricing, raising pricing in particular. So I kind of work on putting together our editorial for our magazine, which is also called Security Nation. And one of the kind of recurring topics that I've been throwing in there is the fact that we do need to be, as an industry, thinking about how we're addressing inflation by raising our costs, raising our price, sorry, not costs. And one of the common themes, though, that I found through doing some of this research is not as a reason for raising your prices, not citing or too closely aligning it with inflation, and instead making sure you're communicating the value of the service that you're offering. I'm kind of curious on your opinion on that. And then in addition to that, I remember there was something I was going to say. I might have lost it. But yeah, I guess I'm wondering what you think about making sure you're not tying yourself too closely to only raising your costs for inflation. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I generally think I agree. We tend to see the data in terms of what levels of price increase our clients are doing, how frequently they're doing them, and things like that, and maybe a little bit of what the mix is between hitting recurring revenue versus installation fees or both. But as I talk to the clients, I mean, I generally, from what I've heard, is that you're right. I mean, I don't think you need to be defensive about it. I think all of us have the same experience, right? I mean, my wife and I went out to dinner last night, and I think we spent twice at this restaurant what we usually do. And we groused a little bit about it, but we're going back. I mean, we were happy. It was good to be outside. It was a good value. We spent the money, and I think your members' clients are the same way. You don't want to be defensive about it. I mean, your costs are up, and the value of your service is proven and there. So I agree with you. I think you raise the price. You try not to be too defensive about it. The mechanics of it, I think you're probably better having your members talk to each other than
exactly.
About it. But I will tell you this: the key is get out there and do it. Don't doing it. You got to start doing it. Yeah. If you wait too long, then you got too far to make up all at once.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a role that ESA can play is finding a way to really communicate to the general public that your security system is vital and important, and it shouldn't be treated the same as your Amazon or Spotify subscription, to where if the price goes up, that's something that you can just, unsubscribe to or cancel. I think we need to find a way to communicate to the general consumer that no, your security and your home monitoring, that's something that is non-negotiable and is essential. So I think that's another way that we can kind of support our integrator members in making those price increases, is kind of changing the narrative over a home security monitoring system.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hannah. And I think, again, ESA would be a great a great vehicle for helping do that, because the whole industry has an interest in making sure that the end user understands the value
Right.
of the system and that it is valuable. One of the things I just came back from a meeting with a group of clients that we work with, and I was helping them kind of work through, how much you'd have to tinker with like the recurring revenues versus install fee to kind of equalize the profitability and value and some of the math on that. And what was interesting was we ran a bunch of different scenarios, and at the end of the day, we were focused for whatever reason on about $4 per month increase to an average customer. We were talking about that impact, and it was huge over the average life of the customer. And I reminded everybody that at lunch before I came to the conference in the hotel I was in, I spent $4.50 for a glass of iced tea. So it's kind of like, come on, we're talking about security here. I mean, this is really important stuff, very highly valuable, and no sense in being bashful about it. Just get in there and remind the customer you're there for them, around the corner, around the clock, and you got to charge.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So my next question is, what advice would you give to other colleagues in the industry, or conversely, mistakes you've made along the way that you would share as cautionary tales? I know that you're not directly an integrator, but I still feel like you have a lot of expertise that would be good for you to share.
Yeah, I think, you told me in advance you were going to ask me that. And so I've thought about it a bit, and I can't say I've got any clever answer other than I would say this. The one thing that I learned early in my career, before I actually started my firm, I had a partner in a firm I was with that always said this to the client. They always said, every day you don't sell your business for the value that the market's bidding you, you're buying it at that price. And what I like to do is to remind everybody, most of your listeners, and even if you're not a direct owner of the company, when you come in, your job is obviously linked to it, is that you got to be mindful of that. I mean, you have to have the discipline to say, every day I'm going to come and I'm going to reinvest this money in this business. And I deserve, it's a little like the pricing we were just talking about. I deserve a return on this capital because the money that's invested in the company has alternatives, right? I mean, you can go invest in a different business. You can do any number of things with the money. And money tends to be fairly efficient, right? If you're not creating value, you're not going to keep the support behind it. So one of the things I just caution everybody, first thing I like to say is just keep that in mind and make sure that you're having the discipline to make sure that the business is generating value relative to what it's worth, so that capital stays behind the business and supported in it. The second thing I was going to tell you, we just discussed, I tell all of your members, raise prices. Yep. I can't tell you how much, we've got some clients we've worked with for over 20 years. And I look at them now, and they're getting higher RMR per customer. They're managing the business better and all of that. But the problem is the pricing hasn't kept pace. So what they're making off of the customer is actually about the same or less, even though they're doing more for them. You got to get in there and maintain on prices. I think the biggest mistake that I've ever made is forgetting or letting our clients forget that while there's a lot of cool gadgets that support this industry, this is still a service business. I mean, at the end of the day, what you're providing, most of you, in 90-some% of your circumstances, is you are providing a service. The equipment's important. You want to point to the shiny new thing you're putting in their business or their home to help do things, but at the end of the day, it's all about the service. So make sure you got that buttoned up. Yep.
Have the new tech mixed with the old-timey customer service. I mean, you have a great synergy right there if you find a way to master both of those axes.
Yeah. Oh, and the one other thing I might mention too, which I think I do bring this up in the town hall. I always think it's important. People enjoy it at our conference when we talk about it, is kind of, why the industry remains fragmented. Why do we have ADT, who's now, has Google as an investor in State Farm? I mean, just imagine that. And they are the 800-pound gorilla in the industry. And yet we also have thousands of other small companies that compete with them. And I think the answer to that is because the end user, some value local. Like my wife and I, the restaurant we went to, it was a locavore, right? It's eating local. It's supporting local businesses. And I think a lot of your members are that. And I think there's a huge value to that, reminding the customer that. And then on the other hand, what's great, we've got some big players in the industry that are kind of pushing technology and innovation and design and all of that. But what's really awesome is that there's still room for both. And I think that's exciting. Yeah.
100%. Well, it looks like we're hitting about our 30-minute mark, maybe a little bit past, but I just have one more question I was hoping to ask you. What would you say to someone who's considering an ESA membership?
Yeah, well, I tell you, I again, it's been just an absolute honor and pleasure to become more involved with the organization. Always knew about it, of course, and was always supportive of it. But now that I get to see the inside and work with you, Hannah, and the rest of the staff and all of the just great volunteers in the company in the association, I can tell you it is amazing. There are more resources available, more great ideas, more smart people wrestling with the same thing that you probably are. I mean, I tell you, you'd be a fool not to join. I mean, it's just one of those things you just got to do it because it's a great organization and it's definitely worth it.
Fabulous. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, Michael. We really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say on the town hall on November 8th. Again, everyone who is interested in joining, go to our website, esaweb.org/calendars. Make sure you register. It's going to be awesome. You're going to go more in depth in some of the topics that we discussed today on this podcast. Just thanks again, Michael.
Sure. My pleasure, Hannah.
Awesome. So thanks again for everyone who tuned in to today's episode. Make sure to subscribe. We are on all podcasting platforms, and the full video version is available on YouTube. And if you're curious about how ESA membership can power your business, make sure to visit our website, esaweb.org, and take some time to schedule a discovery call with our membership team. You'll be happy you did. Have a great day, Security Pros.